Yeah, I'm kinda late to the party again, but we're gonna roast the Game Awards anyway. Roll it!
Our direction goes to Deathloop.
Really, Queen?
Halo Infinite.
What? Huh?
Genshin Impact.
Never before seen look at the Matrix Resurrection.
Oh my god, who the hell cares?
Imagine Dragons is back at the game.
No! God!
It Takes Two.
What? Saying fuck the Oscar and now... actually, in a way, the Oscars got fucked because the Game Awards is getting way better, so...
Well, that ended on a high note at least. 2021, aka Hell World Part 2, was surprisingly stacked with games that I wanted to play, and I wasn't able to get around to a lot of them. But if you're going into this video looking for confirmation bias on your own favorite games, well, you're in the wrong place. If you're looking for something interesting to play you may have missed out on, welcome. In fact, I hope this video gets discovered by a lot of people because I'd like some of these games to get a bit more recognition. What I'd normally play, such as JRPGs and stuff like that, I'm starting to become a bit disillusioned with, and you'll see hints of that occasionally in this video. So in order to fill out this list, I had to look elsewhere for interesting things to play. Anyway, I don't want to spoil it further, so I'll stop wasting your time. Same deal as last year. This is a list of all the 2021 games I played from start to finish, and straight up remasters are excluded, with some very specific exceptions. Remakes, it depends. I kinda broke the rules last time anyway, so expect me to do that again, because rules are made to be broken. Speaking of which, let's give a shout out to the most dishonorable mention of the year, Balan Wonderworld, a woefully unworthy successor to the Knights franchise that Sega just pretends doesn't exist anymore. I mean, look at this mess. I only played the demo of the game on Switch, but couldn't even get through that. The gameplay was just broken and unenjoyable on a fundamental level that I knew it would never be fixed into a good game. The only redeeming quality it has is the presentation, including the music and cocaine-fueled CGI animations. Go watch Donkey's video about the game if you want to laugh at it. Don't bother getting it, unless you hate yourself. Or you hate your kids. And another dishonorable mention, sorta, is Blue Reflection's Second Light, which I ordered a very expensive version of, and it got lost in the mail. So I decided not to play it at all because I was so salty. Thanks, USPS. No lolly jailbait FBI jokes in the video this time, unfortunately.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Man, after playing Pokemon Moon back in 2016, I thought I didn't care about the series anymore. It had been stale for quite some time before that, but I think I was just in denial about it until then. I've always wanted them to reboot, sort of, by making a new grand adventure game, and it looks like that's what we'll be getting with Pokemon Legends Arceus, but damn, it's looking pretty rough. I hope that it's not a sign of development trouble because it could be the type of Pokemon adventure game I've always wanted since I was a kid. On the other hand, we have pretty much the opposite for this year, Pokemon Unite. So basically, I got dragged into trying it. I'm only a fan of very few multiplayer games, and MOBAs were a type that never interested me, and trying this one out only solidified that opinion. You play it a few times, maybe try out all the characters, or in this case Pokemon, and if the mechanics don't grab you and make you want to practice and get better, you've experienced everything the game has to offer pretty much. That said, I can't really give this game a fair rating since it's just not for me. I'm also bad at teamwork. Always have been. Having to work with other human beings? Fucking disgusting. Get that shit out of here. Oh yeah, and this game has pay-to-win elements. And it's a 10-cent game. No thanks. Next. Do you enjoy bad voice acting like I do?
I'm getting a bad feeling.
If so, you should check out Ultra Age. Not just for that though. This is a surprisingly competent low-budget hack-and-slash game from Korea that appears to take inspiration from Devil May Cry and Nier Automata. And it's hard as balls. Well, sort of. As the difficulty curve is pretty inconsistent throughout the game. but if you've played games like this before, you should be able to grind through it in less than 20 hours. As long as you don't skip the dialogue. Don't you dare skip that glorious English dialogue, just saying.
Medea! What do you think you're doing?
I have to admit, I really loved the action combat once I got the hang of dodging enemies, switching my weapons, and using break attacks often when optimal. I kinda wish it was a bit more deep, or that there were more enemy types, but it was a small time game after all, so I can't get too upset about the game's shortcomings. I wouldn't mind seeing a continuation of it, especially if they keep up the quality voice acting.
Damn. I'm fine. I was just enjoying the unfamiliar air for a moment. A robot like you might not understand, but a planet exploration mission starts with feeling the air with your entire body.
It's time to join Mr. Red-Haired Adventurer again, but this time, we get to visit a rather unique location compared to his previous outings. Ys 9, Monstrum Nox, is set entirely in the dark, depressing city of Balduc and its immediate surrounding landscape. And what kind of adventure of Adol would it be without something ridiculously unfortunate happening to him right at the beginning of the story that drags him into a campaign to fight off whatever evil happens to be taking root in whatever location he happens to be in? This time, he gets arrested and sent to prison by the occupying Romans and the local hieroglyph knights, only to escape not long afterwards because he's lucky like that, which results in him getting roped into the war between the shadowy monstrums and the demonic spirits called Lemures. The East series is known for its grand sense of adventure and fast, fluid combat, and this game is no exception to the latter. But this time, you spend most of your time in one place. You don't get to explore much of Balduc from the get-go due to magical barriers keeping Adol confined for early parts of the game. The ability to explore is treated like a reward of its own, and it's quite satisfying once you are able to, with your monstrum abilities allowing you to run up walls, glide, and do various other things later on, which made exploring the nooks and crannies of every location a lot of fun. The city is designed well, but you'll notice that it looks rather dull and lifeless, which was intentional, but it also lacks detail in some areas. To me, it's kind of nostalgic because it reminds me of one of my favorite PS3 360 games. That will be brought up later in this video, but that means it looks very 7th gen. Falcom is nowhere near a AAA game developer, so it's excusable, but it really feels like they are biting off more than they can chew, which is weird because I never got this feeling from the previous game. Because you are so isolated to one location, the story really drags its feet with lots of cutscenes, forcing you to get involved with every side character arc similar to how they handle the story in The Legend of Heroes. However, unlike The Legend of Heroes, there's a 99% chance you won't see any of these people except Dogi in the next East game, so it's a lot harder to give a damn about them. You can skip the side quests if you want, but in order to progress the story, you have to fill the Nox meter in the top left of the screen, which is done by doing side quests. Or you can run around the city fighting the same goddamn Lemures over and over and over again. And not only that, you have to do them all or grind that Nox meter to 200% every chapter if you want to unlock every location. It took me quite a while to get through this game because of all this tedium. About 6 months with 48 hours of playtime. It made me miss the more focused experience of the older games, but I have to admit, I still found myself enjoying my time with the game each time I turned it on. I just never looked forward to turning it back on again once I reflected on it. If they insist on going this route for the future of the series, then it's time for Adol to get the big, grand Breath of the Wild-like adventure he rightfully deserves. He's basically an anime version of Link after all. Sort of. Just ditch the fucking harem next time.
You little shit. This was your doing, wasn't it?
No.
Dirty liar. Mark my words. I'll remember this.
It's time to take another dive into the bizarro hellscape that is Little Nightmares. I don't really play horror games, at all, but this series really caught my eye due to its unique atmosphere, grotesque caricatures, and a cute little protagonist that you just want to make it back home safe, wherever that may be. Little Nightmares 2 is definitely more of the same thing. This time you control a different character, however, and you will eventually team up with another, making the game kind of like a big escort mission, but kinda not. It reminded me a lot of Ico because of that. It also reminded me of Ico for having god-awful combat sequences, but fortunately they are few and far between. But does Little Nightmares 2 hold up as well as the original? Yeah, kinda. It's pretty much more of the same, like I said, where you traverse through creepy, distorted locations, mainly going from point A to point B, solving simple puzzles along the way with some hidden stuff on the side sprinkled in every now and then, and finish the game in about 4 hours. You don't want to fix what ain't broken for sure, but at the same time, it being more the same means the scare factor isn't really there anymore. Like the grotesque designs of NPCs and surprisingly disturbing moments in the first game were much more impactful. They did try something different with the final 2 chapters, however, but I won't spoil it here. And also for reasons I won't spoil, you can jump into this series with either game. It's worth experiencing, that I can assure you. Have you ever wanted to be a junkyard mutant furry that can be good or evil in a post-apocalyptic world, with environmentalist propaganda shoved into your face every 3 minutes while an old man narrates your every action and everyone else's speech? If you answered yes to that, go jump into a burning tar pit. But before you do that, play Biomutant. Oh boy, there is a lot to say about this clusterfuck of a game. It flew under the radar for a long time due to development hell until around launch, then disappeared again afterwards. So if this is your first time hearing about it, you're probably not alone. Biomutant is an open-world, third-person action-adventure RPG, where you play as a fairly customizable mutant furry thing that can be one of 5 different classes from the start, and uses customizable scrap weapons and radioactive elemental abilities. Your character's destiny is to save the world tree from destruction with various furry tribes, as it's the one thing sustaining life on the planet now after the totally subtly named Toxinol Corporation polluted the world to a point of utter inhospitability. Or, since you're allowed to be an evil bastard, you can align yourself with one of the other furry tribes and accelerate the world's destruction instead. Throughout the story, it's very clear this game was heavily inspired by Fable and Black and White. Like the latter, you even have a good and evil conscience that bicker at each other each time you make a choice based on alignment. Honestly, I love that aspect. It made me feel right at home, as we haven't had anything like it in a while that I'm aware of. The story itself isn't that deep or special or anything otherwise, though. The gameplay, on the other hand, is a mixed bag of good ideas executed poorly, glitchy messes, and what the fuck were they thinking kind of ideas. I love exploring open-world games, and the way it was designed kept that aspect fresh and interesting throughout the game. A decent variety of geographical settings to explore, various mounts and vehicles to use, tons of scrap items to salvage for your pretty much fully customizable Bizarro arsenal, and secret locations to unlock and discover as you go through the game and distract you from your main goal. It's definitely designed how a good open-world game should be, but it's held back by having to fight with the game's janky controls the entire time, as well as the game's unpolished combat that's lacking in several areas, and fairly easily exploitable with the right gear and unlockable special moves. The worst thing about this game is its narrator. Aside from our good and evil conscience, the narrator is the only voiced part in the game, while only gibberish comes out of the other characters, followed up by the narrator's translation, instead of just having the characters fucking speak for themselves.
The legend of the one-eyed child that grew up as an outcast is old and sad.
And the narrator translates everything in third person, meaning if you turn it off, it's very awkward to read the game's dialogue via subtitles only. And not only that, he will randomly say random shit throughout the game if you don't turn it off completely, which gave me some serious PGMSD, post-Guildmaster stress disorder.
You've received a new quest card.
Shut up, old man!
You little shit!
Anyway, it's unfortunate that this game has so many glaring flaws, because if they could be rectified, this would be a great game. Like, a really great game. I bet modders could have a field day with it if they tried. Oh well. Even if that happens, I won't be able to experience it on the shitty PS4 version that I got, since the special edition got price glitched on Amazon and I got it half off.
Nice.
Probably wouldn't have played this game otherwise, really, but I'm actually glad I experienced it, radioactive warts and all. Okay. I know this is gonna look a little sus, because we have the second furry game in a row.
That's a bit sussy!
Kaze and the Wild Masks. Since it appears to be a standard 2D platformer, it looks like something I would never really play or talk about, but it got recommended to me by someone describing it as like Donkey Kong Country. And when I say like Donkey Kong Country, I mean it practically imitates the Super Nintendo trilogy, which is exactly what I wanted. I know, very biased. If you're like me who loves the hell out of those 3 games but wasn't all that impressed with the way they designed Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii, then this is the game for you. Kay's is basically a Dixie Kong Echo Fighter with her spin attack and helicopter ears, and she can use mask pickups to give her various abilities, which function very similar to the animal barrels from DK2 and 3. Fuck the dragon mask though, just saying. The game even has you collect golden letters K-A-Z-E, and has 2 bonus stages hidden in every level, so yeah, you probably know going into this whether you like it or not, because it really wears its influence on its sleeve, and tattoos it to its face, and chest, and taint. Okay, you get it. Next entry. Guess what? I did a brave thing. I played a roguelite for the first time. Ever since I heard of the roguelike and roguelite genres and what makes them different from other games, I was always hesitant to give them a try. When you die in these games, you lose a lot of progress, or you have to start back at the very beginning, or suffer some other similar penalty. To me, that type of punishment always seemed arbitrary and a waste of the player's time, which is why I never got into them when I have so many other options to try. But one small Korean game that came out in 2021 got me interested with its cute protagonist, colorful art style, action-packed gameplay, and a bevy of good reviews, and a physical version with English support. Especially the latter. Typical me. The game begins as Rona, the original metallic child, sends an emergency transmission to Earth from a space station where the entire game takes place. She's badly damaged and needs your help to repair herself and eventually fight her way through the hordes of robots and the other metallic children to stop the massive station from falling into the Earth, which will cause countless deaths and serious damage. Of course, there's more to it than that, but you'll have to discover that yourself by struggling through this game's punishing combat and roguelike elements that triple the game's actual playtime if you die as much as I did. After playing this, my opinion on roguelike elements hasn't really changed from before I ever tried one. Without these, the game would be much less irritating to complete and feel much less repetitive. Not to mention the other frustrating elements such as randomized power-ups, random availability of healing, and even random hindrances and traps. Maybe this game just didn't implement them in a way that adds to the experience. And to be fair, these random elements also do a little to keep the game interesting as you continue to play, as without them, it would be a dull experience with spongy enemies and stiff controls that are occasionally unresponsive at the most inopportune moments. All that being said, when you get lucky and things go your way, and you get the right power-ups and weapons on your run, finishing off a boss at the end of each stage can be pretty satisfying, as is uncovering the backstory and getting closure for poor little Rona. So while it was something I normally wouldn't play, I enjoyed it for what it is, and if you want to try it yourself, get the demo on Steam. So I went on a bit of a Metroidvania spree in 2021, partially inspired by my top 10 fantasy main protagonists who don't use swords video, and partially inspired by what came out last year. I started by finally playing through Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the first time from start to full completion.
Die, monster!
Then did 100% runs on Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, and Metroid Zero Mission, all of which I had already played but never went for 100%. Then I played Hollow Knight after many recommendations from others, and then played a smaller indie game called Chasm, all within the span of like 6 weeks. I also finally went back and played Metroid 2, a game I first played almost 30 years ago, but never beat until 2021. Then in December, I played the Pinballvania game Yoku's Island Express. But enough of that, you know where this is going. Record of Lodos War, Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth.
Got him!
Don't worry, we'll get to that later. For now, let's talk about this little gem that probably slipped under a lot of people's radar. Record of Lodos War is actually a series of fantasy novels that began in 1988 and has had various video games since that same year, mostly in Japan. In this new one, you play as the High Elf Deedlit, who is trapped in a strange labyrinth filled with monsters, as well as other characters she knew from the past, which includes a lot of references I don't get since I was never into the series before. But things are not what they seem here. The spirits of wind and fire are her main allies in getting through this place, and that doubles as the game's main gimmick, switching between the two to attack enemies with one or the other, and to swap your resistance as well to block wind and fire damage. They also heal you over time if you keep them powered up, which sounds like it makes the game easy, but if you get hit, you lose that regeneration until you charge them up again. The game is unfortunately pretty easy anyway, due to the low HP of most enemies in the game, with the exception of bosses, which are pretty cool for the most part. And you can't deny that retro pixel art style is incredible. Unfortunately, and rather bizarrely, this game has some technical issues including frame rate drops and crashing, at least on the Switch version. However, that just may be due to me buying the Japanese version, which had no patches by the time I got it, which included some missing and poor English translations. Still, I was able to complete it without much issue due to the frequent save points, and it was pretty short. If you love the Symphony of the Night era Castlevania games and need a distraction, it's worth a shot. Have you ever gone into a game with certain expectations, only to have them thrown back in your face, then spat on and curb stomped? Well, that's what Kena Bridge of Spirits was like for me. Looking at it, you think, oh, it looks like a pleasant, wholesome, casual adventure inspired by Pixar's 3D movie art style. Guess I should just play it on hard mode since it might get boring otherwise, right? Right?
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Okay, the last thing I expected to get was one of the most punishing and unforgiving combat systems I have ever experienced in any game I have ever played. Not even exaggerating. I even looked it up, only to see that people were saying this game was harder than Demon's Souls, which made me think, you know, I'm gonna struggle through it on hard mode anyway. And struggle I did, holy shit. The first main story boss, which I won't be showing due to spoilers, handed me my ass so many times I lost count. Poor Kena. Aside from that, the game has a very well designed and beautiful world to explore around in, with a decent amount of different collectibles to find. It's nothing groundbreaking for sure, and neither is the story. But I loved poking around every corner to find all the rot and clear up as much of the corruption I could to reveal each little area and look at all the details, before continuing to the next brutal combat segment. Unfortunately for me, the way the game is designed means no amount of collectibles and upgrades will save you from having to get good. And also unfortunately for me, like with Biomutant, I only had the shitty PS4 version that runs like ass, so that made the combat just a bit harder, especially when trying to nail a perfect parry when the game dips to 10 FPS. Regardless of the technical issues, I would still recommend it to people even if PS4 is their only option. Just don't play it on hard mode, unless you enjoy misery.
Oh, thank you.
So, the annual shooters were pretty shit this year. Again. I know, I don't normally talk about them either, but I did try something else that was pretty fun.
Hello, I am Master Chief. Time to kid some new bass.
Technical issues aside, Halo Infinite's multiplayer was very well put together with fairly balanced maps that were nicely detailed and fun to play around with, and new weapons that were fun to use, especially the Cinder Shot and Stalker Rifle. But it has a travesty of a progression system loaded with microtransactions and a lot of missing features, meaning at launch it was pretty bare bones multiplayer compared to even the 15-year-old Halo 2. Not that my opinion means anything since I almost never play these types of games, but hey, while I was playing it, I had fun, and that's what matters most. Spent most of my time shitting the place up since I hadn't touched the series in over 12 years or whatever. But Halo Infinite has plenty of tools to get you up to speed, like the shooting range and training modes against bots. That way, you can actually not get completely destroyed once you get into a game, eventually.
I'm having a really good time.
Unfortunately, my horrible internet connection didn't help things. But once I got going in a game, it worked just fine. Not much else to say on this one since I'm no expert. I didn't play any of the campaign because I'm way too far behind in the series, so yeah. Back to team killing and teabagging around in Big Team. When it decides to function. Thick thighs save lives, bitches. On to the next entry. Okay, for real. It's no secret that I love the Atelier series at this point, so naturally I would be playing the shit out of this one once it came out. I was also simultaneously playing Atelier Liddy and Suelle, which unfortunately may be my least favorite game of the series. So I started playing Ryza 2 and played it pretty much non-stop. By the time I had damn near 100% completed it, I still hadn't even beaten Liddy and Suelle. So I can thankfully say that Ryza 2 is one of the higher tier Atelier games that improved quite a lot on the previous game's mechanics and overworld design. It's not quite the oversized world that Fearus had, but big enough to have enough collectibles and secrets scattered throughout the game to keep you busy for quite a while. Alchemy is similar to the first one with not much changed, but they added a few new features to spice things up, allowing you to become extremely brokenly overpowered very quickly if done correctly. I played the game on hard from start to finish, and it wasn't enough to even be remotely challenging at all. At least for me, one who obsessively and compulsively hoards massive amounts of high-quality ingredient items and was very familiar with the alchemy system from the start thanks to the first game, allowing me to destroy pretty much everything. There are higher difficulty settings, but they should have been available from the start without having to beat the game once first. As a side note, can you game developers stop doing this? Please? Just saying. The story in this game started off much more interesting than the previous one did, but unfortunately was pretty disappointing in the end. Everything leading up to it was so promising, and most of the fairly detailed amount of lore you learned from the world via the memories and the ruins was inconsequential. I imagine some of it may be to set up a third game, but I do hope they improve on a lot of the world building, because there is a lot of potential here, rather than focus on the petty character interactions that take up much of your time playing this game. However, I will say that the characters are more likable this time around, especially the relationship between Ryza and Claudia. Maybe it's just my bias against annoying anime teenagers, and that they are more adult now, but whatever. This game follows the series trend of the second game being the best, or at least my favorite, in each trilogy of Atelier games. Let's just hope the third doesn't follow the trend of being my least favorite. What do you get when you combine the gameplay of A Hat in Time, the design philosophy of Castlevania,
Time, monster!
the level design of The Legend of Zelda, the silly edginess of something like Disgaea, and the soul of Hollow Knight? Sounds like something that doesn't exist, right?
Well, you're wrong!
There's a small little indie game called Blue Fire that neatly fits that description. So if you're a fan of any of those things I mentioned, definitely look this up, because I had a hell of a time with it, and might even play it again sometime. You play as this little edgy ball of fun, Umbra, who is awakened as an experimental being fused of shadow and fire. The game's story is pretty minimal, told through its aesthetic more than the little amount of dialogue you get to see, as there are many loose ends to it. And that's fine, because 1, it lets you use your imagination and try to fill in the gaps, and 2, it lets you focus on the real draw of the game, which is the fast, fluid, speedrunner's wet dream yet somewhat slippery 3D platforming gameplay. You start in an area called the Fire Keep and progress to various other areas, learn new abilities, delve into some Zelda-like dungeons, then continue onward, as well as use those abilities to reach new areas in previous zones, very much like a Metroidvania game, but it's in 3D. And for some reason, there is no map, so prepare to get lost every now and then. I loved it anyway. But you can very much tell that this is a small-time dev, especially with the combat, which is very basic with not a lot of enemies throughout the game. Unless you're feverishly watching your health bar, sometimes it's hard to tell when you actually get hit, which led to me retardedly dying at the very beginning like so. But at least the combat isn't the main draw, as my favorite part was the void stages, and the game has a level editor on Steam to make your own, which is cool. What's not cool is that trying to look stuff up for this game on search engines always gets you random shit. Oh well, give it a try. Bet you didn't expect me to bring up Pokemon again, did you? Unlike the other recent and upcoming Pokemon games, there is another that came out in 2021 that's pretty damn pretty. And it's only a spin-off, and a sequel 22 years in the waiting. New Pokemon Snap. Stop it with these titles, Nintendo.
How asinine.
What a pleasant surprise this game turned out to be. A worthy successor in pretty much every single way to the original game. I honestly have nothing to complain about with this game really, except maybe the loading times. Not only are there more courses for you to experience than in the original game, there are up to 3 variations of each of them based on how much experience you have in each particular zone. Each variation has different Pokemon to capture, and every single Pokemon in the game has 4 different poses or behaviors to take a picture of for your records. So it'll take a long time before you run out of things to do in the game. Getting to the ending isn't very difficult, sure, but there's plenty to do besides that, including a handful of courses added in a free update post-launch, which was nice. If you're on the fence about getting this one, or if you like the original, I can wholeheartedly recommend it, especially if it's discounted. I know I've been a bit harsh on Nintendo games I've played recently.
How asinine.
But this one was so much better than I expected. But did it rekindle my interest for the main series? No, not really. Metroid Dread. Do I really need to explain myself with this one? Well, yeah, I guess that's why you're watching after all. 19 years in the making, we finally get an actual sequel to Metroid Fusion. And it very much plays and is structured like previous games as well, meaning there's a lot of retreading old ground in this game, but they do spice it up in various ways, such as those freaky Emmy robots. I mean, annoying Emmy robots.
You little shit.
I get what they were trying to do with these things, but it felt contrived most of the time, and they were just an annoyance more than anything. And of course, they had to bring back those goddamn Shine Spark challenges. But other than that, and that once again, per usual Nintendo fashion, there's a severe lack of options, such as changing the controls or even the fucking volume levels. The game is very good. Like very, very good. As soon as I started playing it, I knew I was in for a treat. The game is at its best when you're outside of an Emmy zone, exploring the detailed world and fighting the various bosses, all of which were very satisfying to beat down, and it was a lot more challenging than I expected, which was nice. There were game journalists making really stupid complaints about how the game was too hard and needs to be easier for them because they're bad at their jobs, or Sony ponies saying that the game shouldn't be $60 because it's 2D, among other stupid drama that came out around the game's release.
Come on now, don't get angry. Don't get angry. It's just a stupid NPC.
Best to just ignore all that nonsense. I could make the argument that the game is overpriced because it's short, but it's to be expected really, since it's just like previous games in the series. I also had some issues with the ending, but I won't get into that. If you haven't played it yet, you should at some point. But you should also go back and play the older games too, as the Metroid series storyline is actually pretty interesting to follow. Hopefully Metroid Prime 4 will live up to the agonizing wait too. Alright, next up we have a type of game that I haven't really talked about much, if at all. If you've seen my past videos, it might come as a surprise that I really like games with management elements, including simulators, real-time strategy games, and especially town and city builders, the latter being the next entry on the list. Medieval Dynasty is a village builder, but also a survival and role-playing game, so this was right up my alley, and hoo boy did I spend a lot of time in this one, despite it being pretty basic. The scenario is this. Your home was raided during a war, and you lost your immediate family. You travel to the valley the game is set in to meet up with your uncle, Eordan, but upon meeting up with an acquaintance of his, Unegost, he tells you your uncle died recently as well. As the Castellan of the Valley region, he decides to allow you to take up residence anywhere you may please, and I mean literally anywhere in the valley. This is probably the coolest thing about the town building system in the game. You can build wherever you want, except too close to other villages, meaning the experience is going to vary immensely from person to person. As for me, I somehow managed to pick one of the most inconvenient places, the southeast mountainous corner of the map, which was far away from every other village except one, with a landscape that made building placement more difficult than it should have been because of the uneven terrain, a river, and an undeletable road that runs straight through it. Not to mention being surrounded by dangerous wildlife, such as a friggin' bear right behind my first house. But it made for an interesting emergent story to develop for my character, as he almost didn't survive the first mountain winter, and struggled to scrounge up enough coin for even the lowest of taxes, and barely made it to the faraway town in time to pay them before spring ended. But he didn't give up, and prevailed. The inconvenient location he lived in paid off in the long run, as he discovered a large abandoned mine nearby that gave him and his new villagers an edge in making money every year, and eventually turned his life around, became very wealthy and successful, married the first woman he invited to live in town who has a penchant for blacksmithing,
Nice.
and had a son to take over his dynasty once his life is over. Anyway, enough of that goofy story. After all, I'm really just fluffing up what is entirely a very mundane game that is not that deep. While this game did come out of early access in September, it still felt like I was playing an early access game. The interactions you have with NPCs feel like they came straight out of an alpha build, and what little quests you can do in the game are also uninteresting. The biggest appeal of the game is the building and management aspect, which is why I played it for so long last fall. It may even become one of my relaxation games in the future like Elder Scrolls, and for only $30, I can't say I regretted it.
For weeks, I held on to that thought. Until the valley from my mother's stories. I could see it. This is where I can start a new life.
This next entry is a game I could spend a long time talking about, so I'll try to control myself. Disgaea 6, Defiance of Destiny. A game that turned out a lot better than I expected, that brought many new changes and content, but at the expense of the scope and features that the series is known for. This game, like the rest, is set in the Netherworld, where the plot revolves around a gaggle of comedic demons, along with the occasional angel or human that joins them. The main character, Zed, is a weakling zombie who's dead set on taking down the almighty god of destruction that continues to ravage each dimension they come across by using a power called super reincarnation, a spin on a game mechanic of previous Disgaea games that rarely got any story attention. The story took some surprising, interesting twists that made it a lot better than I thought it would be, with characters that developed in ways that I did not expect. It was quite the pleasant surprise, despite some questionable localization moments. For the first time ever, Disgaea is in full 3D, whereas previously they were still using sprites for every character, and I have to admit, I absolutely love the 3D models, and I want them to stay and continue to be improved upon. Also this time around, they go balls to the wall with character stats, allowing you to level up from 1 to 9,999 like previous games, but then go up to 9,999,999, and then 99,999,999.
Boy, that escalated.
May sound like a daunting task, but there is a new feature to help you get there, which is probably the greatest addition to the series since its inception: Auto Battle. A feature that allows you to tinker with your character's AI and let them run amok on their own, completely alleviating the suffering that was the grind of previous post games. I love this feature, as I did in other games that allowed you to do this, such as Final Fantasy XII, and I hope it remains in the series going forward. Just be careful you don't overheat your Switch by leaving it on too long, because damn, the game runs fairly well otherwise. Had 0 crashes unlike previous entries on the Switch. But with all this good new stuff, some sacrifices were made. Creating new 3D models from the ground up means we have less characters and classes this time around. That extends to the game's boss fights, which is just the same god of destruction at the end of every single chapter. And the degree of character customization that Disgaea 5 had is vastly beyond what we got in Disgaea 6. Furthermore, the new stat system somehow made much of the campaign feel more balanced than previous games, offering a decent degree of challenge without requiring the grind, with the exception of the game's boss fights, which were almost all pathetically easy. Thankfully, since they're all the same thing, I guess. But trying to manage your characters when everything is in the billions and trillions and quadrillions and you're a dyslexic retard like I am, well, it's a bit of a hassle, and feels more like a gimmick than a feature overall. Oh, and I should probably acknowledge Disgaea 5 too for eating up like 400 hours in 2021 as well. Fuck you, Disgaea. I love you.
Bitch! I love you!
You're finally up, lucky you. I was about to take a leak on your face. No, scratch that, I feel a dump coming on.
Ugh, that's disgusting, you damn dirty mutt! Can't you find a normal way to wake someone up?
I already tried kicking you, gnawing on you, reheating you, even dicing and grating you, but nothing worked.
Just what do you think I am?
A rotten slab of meat.
Oh, I have to talk about it, don't I? Yeah, I have to talk about Genshin Impact again.
And the Game Award goes to Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact.
I mean, it's only fair considering the sheer amount of time I put into this love-hate relationship, this Chinese gotcha money and time-sucking piece of shit, this thing I continued to log into on a near daily basis for the entire goddamn year. Yeah, I think I have a problem. Every day after work, every weekend after I wake up, do my daily grind for a half hour or so, maybe do some of the new content and events, then log off. Or that's how it should be, but since I am still playing the shitty PS4 port with the shittiest of internets, it usually takes longer than that. It's been a perpetual battle against the unreasonable frame drops, loading screens, input lag, unresponsive controls, and more. But I kept playing it anyway. Why? Because I like playing it. I still really like the combat despite the horrible lag ruining even some single-player things. I liked experiencing all the new content and events, even though it was a pain in the ass to update the game every month and a half. I liked adventuring through the new Inazuma region and the temporary Golden Apple Archipelago over the summer, even though I still don't really care about the story. I especially like that my luck with pulling 5-star characters turned around quite a bit later in the year, just saying. And I still haven't spent a dime on any of it. Just spent way too much time that I'll never get back.
Miss Honorary Knight, do you love Klee? I also love you very much. You have to play with me lots here or else Mom will be disappointed.
Some games are made to be fun. Some games are made for simple entertainment. Some games are made to make you question your sanity and want to cry yourself to sleep for 3 days. Yeah, those are the ones you'll never forget. Ever played Nier? This game released back in the 7th generation in 2010, and got a remaster in 2021, so that's what we're talking about now. I did say I would exclude remasters, but this is another one of those weird gray areas. Let me explain. Nier had 2 releases, Nier Replicant and Nier Gestalt, with one key difference between the two. In Replicant, you play as a teenager and the main supporting character, Yona, is your sister. In Gestalt, you play as Yona's father instead. Other than that, they are exactly the same game. However, here in the West, we only got to play as Daddy because the developer or publisher decided for us that we would like that more, I guess. More on that later. For the remaster, we get to play as Big Bro in English for the first time, so this is the first official release of Nier Replicant for the West. Not only that, they added new content and dialogue and other things to the game that weren't even in the original or were cut, which was pretty damn cool. But it's still technically a remaster of the original Japanese version. See, this is what I meant by serious gray areas. Oh well, like I said, rules are made to be broken. Nier Replicant version 12247448713969696969969
Nice.
has a lot of improvements over the original game, including better graphics, new voice acting, much more fluid and flashy combat system that's easy to get the hang of, whereas the original was pretty clunky, and it changed enough to make it feel like a somewhat different game. There are a few more bosses to fight, and even a new ending E to experience that's technically already been canon for a while, but it was just relegated to a short story that wasn't in-game prior. Getting this ending for people who have already played Nier before is kind of annoying, since you have to get every other ending again. But if you love the game as much as I do, which is enough for me to go and actually get all the ridiculous trophies that this game has, then it's worth the effort. And yeah, we get to play as Bro for the first time. In my opinion, if they really wanted to make this the truly definitive version of the game, they would have included both young and older Nier, and let you pick between the two. I would have played as the father again, even though I understand why Brother Nier is the ideal protagonist for this game. And having you play as a father trying to save your child is a pretty rare thing in Japanese games, and after having experienced both now, the older Nier story is much more personally compelling. So in a way, aside from releasing both versions in the West, the original developers were correct. I am glad that they chose Gestalt over Replicant for the original Western release. I don't know if I'm in the minority or majority, but this is all insignificant stuff anyway. Nier is a special kind of story. It's so hard to put into words what kind of experience this game is without spoiling anything, and I really don't want to do that if anyone watching hasn't played it yet. If you're a fan of adventure games such as Zelda or Darksiders, you really should experience this one. And if you do, pay close attention to the details, and at the very least play through Ending B. As for me, I was very happy to see this game get such a brilliant remaster, and I know I'm not alone in saying, thank you for letting us experience Ending E in-game rather than leaving it splintered off in some side story book thing. Believe me, I could have easily chosen this as my number one. It's one of my favorite games of all time, but it's a remaster and a game I've already played. If I could have experienced this game for the first time last year, it would be no contest. So please, Yoko Taro, please, Nier 3, Drakengard 4, come on, just do it.
Do it.
Oh, and stop with the mobile bullshit and boring card games.
Don't let your guard down. I guess that was a tad obvious.
So, here we finally are at number 1. What could I possibly put above Nier? Do you have a guess at what it is? Psychonauts 2? No. Age of Empires 4? No. Tales of Arise? No. Scarlet Nexus, Axiom Verge 2, Returnal, Neptunia vs. Senran Kagura, Ratchet & Clank? Nah, those are all games I didn't play for various reasons. As I said in the beginning, 2021 was pretty stacked, and there were a lot of games I didn't get to play even though I wanted to. But if you've been paying close attention at what came out in 2021, especially on the indie side, the answer is obvious. My number 1 game of 2021 is Cuckold Simulator. Just kidding. I didn't play that either. My number 1 game of 2021 is The Rift Breaker. Yep, just like last year, my favorite game is an obscure thing that not many people have heard of probably. Cry about it or something. Better yet, give the demo of this game a try, which is actually the game's prologue. As soon as I completed it, I knew I had to experience the whole thing, and boy am I glad I did. The Rift Breaker combines many different genres to create a unique experience that easily gets my number 1 spot on fun factor alone. Is it an action RPG? Is it a real-time strategy game? Is it a base building simulator? Is it a tower defense game? Yes. So many itches to scratch, and they do it all in one single game. It's incredible. The story is that mankind needs to find a new planet to settle on, and they find Galatea 37. Unfortunately, it's too far away, very dangerous, and they can only send one small unit at a time, and they won't be able to come back. That is, unless they can establish a base and create a two-way rift portal between there and Earth, which takes a ton of resources and energy, and is the primary objective of the game's main story. In the prologue, you, as Captain Ashley Novak, enter a simulation of Galatea 37's natural environment to see if she is up to the task, and in the main game, she is sent to the actual planet. The story from there on isn't all that deep or exciting, as Ashley is kind of a generic protagonist, and her AI mech suit is kind of annoying to listen to. There are little hints of backstory here and there that do add to the experience, but you'll be much more focused on the gameplay after all. First thing the game will have you focus on is establishing a base and building up defenses against any potential danger. And there is a lot of it. Hordes and hordes of enemies will swarm your position from any direction on the map. A surprisingly massive amount of enemies can be on screen at any given time, and it's impressive considering that I had near zero technical issues or crashes while playing this game. There are 4 different biomes on the map, with different resources needed to create your rift station, and different creatures that will eventually want to invade your main base the more you progress through the game. And as you progress, you'll be able to research various new turret-style buildings to defend your base against the Horde, and new weapons to fight them off yourself, including guns, melee weapons, elemental weapons, and explosives, such as my favorite weapon in the game, the mini nuke launcher.
No.
Fire!
No! God!
You'll even get drops from some enemies to mod your weapons to give them better or special attributes, and you can even use these on your towers. There's so many options at your disposal, and so many things you need to build that it might seem overwhelming, but once you get a feel of how the game works, it's an absolute joy to play, despite some of the extremely annoying random events that happen. I enjoyed the main campaign so much, I did something I almost never do. Immediately played the whole thing again on a higher difficulty. Doesn't mean I'm actually good at the game though. There is a survival mode where you can try to survive for a set period of time against waves of enemies, and I can't seem to get the hang of it, because I spend way too much time trying to micromanage my base and getting distracted, only to get ganked by the next horde. But that's meant to be there for whenever you want to return to the game someday and only have an hour or 3. Kind of like the skirmish modes in Age of Empires. The game even has good mod support if that's your thing too. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a co-op mode, and I think this game would be perfect for that, even if I'd probably never use it. But they continue to update the game over time with many fixes and stuff, so maybe one day. If you're bored or can't decide on something to play, I can't recommend this game enough. Give the demo a shot. After all, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Just saying.
Riftbreaker Ashley reporting successful jump procedure.
Roger that. Begin field-based setup.
Houston, I've spotted something near the LZ. It's closing in.
And that's it for 2021. Another year-end video that got pushed back thanks to shipping delays again. But I hope you enjoyed it regardless. And hopefully there is something in this list that you might want to give a try. I certainly enjoyed expanding my horizons a bit this year, and going back to old genres I haven't played in a long while. Hopefully 2022 will have similar results. But I think we all know that the Bugsnax DLC will be the best thing of the year, just saying. Anyway, don't bother leaving a like or dislike since those are meaningless now, I guess. Thanks, YouTube. But go ahead and comment about what you played last year. Did your favorite game make my list? Was there some underrated obscure gem that you discovered? Do you hate everything on this list and want to call me horrible names? Have at it.
Faker!
You little shit.
Dumbass.
You dumbass!
Ouch.
I have a few topics I want to make videos about that I might work on next, and I'd love to do another countdown. My top 10 fantasy main protagonists who don't use swords was a lot of fun to make, so go watch that if you haven't yet. Also follow me on the Twitter, link in the description. I am considering making a Discord server for the channel, but I don't think I have enough of an audience for that yet. Let me know if you'd like to see that sort of thing. And if you do want to see more content in the future, you know what to do.